Are you looking for an escape from manufactured truth wrapped in selfish agenda? Don't you just want to have a real and raw conversation, all masks and rules aside? That's what you're getting here at Titan Evolution Podcast. Get rid of all the nonsense information and discuss everything under the sun without filters. Listen to real stories of real people who will put your current perspectives to the test, guide you on living the life you truly want, and see everything free from judgment and pretenses. Time to get rid of those unhealthy environments and let your authentic self shine. Here are your hosts, Travis Johnson and Carol Carpenter.
Hey, welcome to another fun episode of the Titan Evolution Podcast. I'm Travis, that's Carol, and we've got Laverne Saulny here today. Laverne, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Travis and Carol. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to get this shit rolling, I guess you would say.
Yeah, let's get this shit rolling. Laverne is the current VP of Development for the American Heart Association. She's also a former senior staffer for a U.S. senator and was the chief admin officer of a parish in Louisiana. They don't have counties. They've got parishes. Laverne, how the hell are you? Like, it's really nice to see you.
Well, it's good to see you. The last time we saw each other, we were in Houston, Texas for the She Talk and took some great pictures and hit social media. And, you know, there was this little rumor mill. I was like, is that your boyfriend?
At best, I'm a side chick.
Nah,
so.
that ain't my boyfriend. He's a married man. But though, if he wasn't married, I don't know.
Fair game.
I'm not often jealous of other people in their attire. Like, I largely don't care about fashion, as evidenced by me wearing a t-shirt on every episode I do. But, you know, I've got a pretty nice sport coat that I wear around when I like to wear. Rarely do I feel challenged or threatened, but the coat that Laverne was wearing, man, out of this world. Is that one you bought from Janae?
Yes. And I was glad to be able to sport her wares. So yeah, and I got a lot of compliments on that jacket as well.
As you should. It inspires confidence and jealousy among all the people in attendance.
Well, she spotlighted the jacket on her website to direct people to go to her site to purchase. So hopefully she was able to benefit from that, from me wearing that jacket. So
I hope so. I hope so. You know, there's not a lot of speeches that I remember anywhere you go, right? You working on your stuff, and you might get a nugget here and a nugget there. But your speech on being ashamed and didn't feel confident enough to wear the t-shirt you were wearing, like, that is something that really grasped a hold of me, because not a lot of people expect that kind of a talk, that kind of a thing, especially from someone as confident as yourself. Tell us a little bit about that talk and what t-shirt were you wearing?
So I wore this t-shirt that says "I am enough," and actually I received a recording just last night from Julie, so I had an opportunity to watch it, and I must admit I'm my hardest critic, right? I'm really hard on myself. But I have to admit, I enjoyed that speech myself. I was shocked. I was like, who is that person? First, the makeup was flawless. I was like, wow, who in the hell is that? But no, you know, when I received that t-shirt, when I unfolded, because I didn't really know what was on the t-shirt. And when I unfolded the t-shirt and saw that it says, "I am enough," I was like, I can't wear that t-shirt. And I really tried to put that t-shirt on, and I just could not put it on. And as I shared in my talk, I talked to my girlfriend, we were having coffee, and she was like, "You can't wear that t-shirt?" I said, "I can't wear that t-shirt." And it really, it was an eye opener for me to really examine myself and really understand, why am I having these issues with me? You know, not having the confidence or the assurance that I am enough, right? And so it was a wonderful internal search, cleansing, if you will, a rehabilitation type of process, and just really beginning to gain confidence and being thankful and grateful as well. So I can wear the t-shirt now. I still have some challenges. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a process, but at least I can wear it with confidence.
With confidence. You know, when I first heard that statement, I am enough, I heard it from a gentleman in town here in Oklahoma City, Asa Laveau, and I didn't believe him when he said it. He worked through a speech and he talked about, like, when will you learn? He's putting this out to the world. When will you learn that this is it? This is all that is, and all that matters is that you are enough. There's nothing you have to add. There's nothing you have to change. There's nothing you have to do to become that, other than the realization and acceptance that you are enough. And I, like you, don't believe it every day. I don't believe it all the time. I wake up in days and I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't put that t-shirt on today. I'm not feeling it. It's so interesting that even a grown ass man that retired from the Navy is like, you know what? I'm not feeling it today. And I think that says a lot about who we are as people and the ebbs and flows of life and what we do. What do you think, Carol?
Well, I think we're kind of victim to comparison, because we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people. And if we can just be happy and content in knowing that, you know, we are perfect for who we are. We are each perfect in our own way, even in the imperfection. And in that point of your life, in the circumstances you're in, you're doing the best you can. So you just got to go with the flow and, you know, understand, hey, you're going to have good days and bad days. It's life. It's just freaking life. You're going to deal with life, right? So as long as you can understand that, I think, you know, we are perfect the way we are, and we are enough every single day. And as long as we can, you know, kind of lead with that foot. I see so much right now negativity, and I think it's because of our own dissatisfaction with ourselves. And that bleeds out into the world. And so if we can, you know, kind of find a way to be more positive with ourselves, then I think it'll bleed also into the world that, you know, we have more positivity and things will look up instead of everybody kind of pointing towards the negative side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely love that. When I look at how we interact as humans, it's one of my favorite topics. Like, everything that I'm curious about, it's like, I want to know how you did it. Why? How'd you come to this? Why does it matter? All these things.
Ever curious, Travis.
And some people are like, ah, no, stop, go away, go look at somebody else. Like, I'm not interested.
Stop asking questions. That's
Why
too
do you want
much
to know
for
all my
me.
secrets? I'm like, I'm curious. And so one thing that really gets me is traffic, right? People are in traffic, something happens in front of them, someone changes lanes, cuts you off, stops short, goes too fast, and all this stuff. And when it happens and you're there and you're seeing someone else do it, you're like, oh man, this guy's a clown, this guy's a jackass, jerk, whatever name. But if you do it, right? If you're like, oh God, I missed the exit, I got to get over right here. Or you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, you expect grace for yourself in that matter, but anyone else that's doing it, you have no grace for them. I see people that do this. I know my wife is a chronic offender of a graceless, graceless driver. I didn't know it was a problem. I didn't really know it was a thing until I started driving the kids around some places. And like, no kidding, like I stopped short, like I decided to go through a light and the guy in front of me didn't decide to go through the light. And I was like, oh, you know, okay, whatever. And then my kids are in the back and they're like, come on. And the kid's like 7 or 8. I'm like, where are they getting this from? I was like, Megan,
Ooh.
what are you telling the kids while you're driving? Because that's just how it goes sometimes, right? They take what they're modeled in front of them and then they go out and do it. And it's not till you get the reflection of what they're doing back at you do you realize, oh man, that's my fault.
Yeah.
You ever have that experience, Laverne, where your kid models or copies something and then you're like, ugh, is this what I look like? Is this what I sound like when they do it?
You know, that's interesting, Travis, that you say that, because just a few years ago, my daughter, Mary, and if you all ever have an opportunity to watch her show at HGTV, she sounds exactly like me. But the interesting thing of it is that she acts a lot like me. And so her husband laughs at us because we have the same mannerisms, right? Our gestures, our laughter, even down to the words we say certain things. And one day I don't know, I was sitting there and I was listening to her talk about the house. You know, she was fussing about, you know, things needed to be in place. And I just sat there and I just was just like, oh my God, that looks like me. And I really didn't. I was like, wow. I mean, it was almost scary because it was exact. And I was like, oh my God, is that learned behavior or is that inheritance? I mean, is that a trait that
It's
she
gotta be
was
both, don't
born
you
with?
think?
Huh?
Well, don't you think it's a little bit of both, Laverne? I mean, they of course see it from you, but I think there's a little bit of the inherited part as well. It's got to be a little bit of both. God knows somebody's got the research on it. Please, please share because I'm curious as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've been in company of people whose son sounds just like their dad's, right, or their or daughters sound like their mother, and it's just like, oh, okay. But when you experience it yourself, when you actually see your daughter sound, gestures, conversations, mindsets, it's really an experience. And even like with my son, my oldest son, his lights, you know, he has his really high-end type of lifestyle, right? Even though he may have a somewhat beer slash champagne pocket, but he's always being very creative and thinking really big. And that's how I think, right? Even when I didn't have nothing, I still was thinking big. And right, dream big. I didn't see that. Awesome. So, you know, even to this day at my age, I still dream big, you know, and I always ask myself, Laverne, are you just delusional? I mean,
No, 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 no,
really?
no. Please don't say that because I think if you dream big, you you kind of step up to the plate. If you don't aspire to dream bigger, then you're okay with mediocrity, and mediocrity is not where I want to be. I want to be way up there, and I'm going to dream as big as I can because even if I miss the mark, it's better than mediocrity.
Right, I agree. And you know, it's interesting. I heard this message from this pastor this past weekend about our words. And you know, and I think I mentioned that in my speech about we can speak life or death, right? And so he was just talking about how the fact that we have the same power as our higher power, and that when he's in the book of Genesis, the fact that he spoke this world in existence, it was spoken. It wasn't thought about. It wasn't undertone. He spoke it with his mouth, and it came to an existence. And so I rushed after the service, and I said the message. I said I'm going to write everything that I desire, the dream big list. So I actually wrote it and I read it out loud. And I said, you know what? I've spoken it. It's in the universe. Hope is part of my purpose, part of why I was created on this earth. And if so, it will happen. So, yep. So I wrote down everything I could think of.
And you verbalized it, so it's out
And
there.
I verbalized it and I spoke it in existence.
Go girl.
Oh, I love that. It even says faith comes by hearing, not by watching, not by seeing, not by writing,
by hearing.
but by hearing. It's interesting that it has a special line right into our heads and into our hearts, exactly what that means. There's some lines in the Bible that talk about, not saying anything bad about other people. And when you think about why that is, there's a couple of reasons that pop up. One is like when you speak it, it's it's in your heart and then you're feeling bad about it. There's another thing that science is proving is that our subconscious only recognizes that there's one person on the planet, and that's us. So anything you say about yourself or anyone else, it assumes is talking about itself, because as far as it knows, there's no one else out there. So when you say terrible things about people, harsh words, whatever the thing is, your subconscious translates that to yourself and you start stacking those things up. It's really a bean counter, a clicker, just like the bouncer has as the nightclub, right? Count how many people are in there, taking them away when they leave. Your subconscious is stacking all these things up. So if you're listening to this and you're not in the place that you want to be, it might be that your subconscious has got the counter that's a little bit too high on the wrong side, and you need to speak some life affirming, life changing words to yourself and others in order to get that balance to go the other way.
Yeah, words are extremely important, whether we express it or we talk to ourselves, like, the inner chatter. And if you're negative, what do you think you're going to be on a daily basis? Negative. So if we can have that inner chatter be positive, then everything that comes out will be positive. It's just like I said before, like, hey, let's stop this. Everybody's, I don't know where and why it's happening. I know there's a lot of people that are discontent. I also know that in the age of social media, we tend to make comparisons to one another. And then we sit there and we go, well, why do they have that? They don't work as nearly as hard as I do. And again, that's the inner chatter, right?
Mhm.
Instead of being jealous of those individuals, what about go, hey, I don't know what the fuck that guy's doing or that gal's doing, but I fucking want to do that. Because that is a bigger difference than saying, fuck, they don't deserve that, right? And it's assuming that you know what it took for them to get there. Because we can't know what it takes for each one of us to get to where we are currently. So why be jealous of it? Celebrate it and go, shit, I want to do that. I got to figure out how to do that instead.
Yeah, that's where that curiosity comes in. There's a line from Zig Ziglar when he talks about positive words and talking to yourself. He said he was on the golf course. Someone he's golfing with, made a terrible shot. And he's like, "Oh, good shot, dummy." And then he watches the guy line up for the next shot. And he's like, in his head, he's like, "Well, let's see how the dummy is going to do," after he's just told himself that's what he is. It just kills me that people treat themselves that way. We always talk about how people treat each other and how terrible it is sometimes. It's even worse when you don't see that person doing damage to themselves every single day, saying they aren't enough. They're not good enough. That because they've done something terrible or something even mildly out of line, that they don't deserve a good life, good people around them. Laverne, I wanted to ask you, I've never talked to a senior staffer for a U.S. Senator before. You're my first one. Be gentle, but I'm curious to learn.
Super impressive.
Yeah, it's really cool. Is it really, like, do you believe it's really cool having done the job? Is there things that you had no clue about that when you were in it and doing it, and you were like, wow, I didn't even know this was a thing? And how did that change? How did that role change how you looked at America and the executive the legislative
Politics?
yeah, how they could change your view of America as an entity?
Well, that's a good question. And, when I was hired for this position, first of all, nobody did believe that I belonged there because I didn't fit the norm. The majority of the people that worked there were highly, highly educated. They had obviously masters and PhDs, and they come from well-established families. They had the opportunity to do internships. Some of them had majored in political science. I was a kid, grew up in the country, barely graduated from high school and struggled in college, right? So, I know that my life is a miracle, and being able to work for a United States Senator was truly a miracle, okay? So I went into this job in the blind, and because of support of this elected official who entrusted in my abilities to be able to serve her. But one of the greatest gifts that I did not know that I had, that I learned later, is that I had a servant heart, that I was willing to serve the people. And that the fact that working for a United States Senator was really a big deal. But at the end of the day, for me, knowing that one, people didn't want me there, and number two, I didn't always feel as though I belonged there. I had to always prove something, until one day I got to the point that I don't have to prove anything to anybody, because I'm doing the greatest gift that was given to me, and that is to serve. And so in my 13 years, being able to do that, because of my servant heart, it reflected in my job performance. I actually staffed the senator more than any other staffer in the state of Louisiana, because her parents live here in New Orleans. So I was responsible not only for her, but I was responsible for her children. I was responsible for her siblings, which was 9 of them total, and her mom and dad.
Mm.
They come from a somewhat Kennedy-like family. Her father was the mayor of the city of New Orleans 2-term. He was the undersecretary of HUD for Jimmy Carter. Her brother went on to be the mayor of the city of New Orleans for 2 terms. She was the state representative, the youngest state representative. She then went on to be a state treasurer for 2 years, and then she went on to be a 3-term United States senator. Being in politics like that, it really helps you understand the issues, and really help you understand how laws are put in place, how they're implemented, how they come about. And in the city of New Orleans, as you all know, we were impacted by one catastrophic experience, from Katrina to oil spill to massive ice storms, which is not the norm here in our state or in South Louisiana. So because of those catastrophic events, we were able to revamp SBA, revamp FEMA, and a number of other organizations within the federal government to help people not only in the state of Louisiana, but across the country. And it was such an honor and a privilege for me that I was a part of those laws being changed for the betterment of people. So it was a humbling experience for me. And also, being able to be in the company of some of the most powerful people in the world that I do not take for granted. Okay. I had the privilege of going to the White House, meeting President Barack Obama. I've been in the presence of Bill Clinton, and actually I had been in the presence of Bill Clinton before I worked for the United States Senate. Being in the presence of first ladies like Jimmy Carter and his wife, and Bill Clinton's wife, her name escapes me, which is
Hillary.
unbelievable. Excuse me?
Hillary,
thank you. Hillary, Michelle, and Barbara Bush. So, I guess the senator, I don't know, she had some sort of discernment. She was a special type of woman. And her heart was a servant heart too. She worked day and night. And the harder she worked, the harder her staff worked. So all of us were worker bees, and we wanted to work. We wanted to fulfill her main objective, and that was to serve the people of the state. And she didn't care if they were Democrats, Republicans, or independents, black, white, whatever. She was willing to serve, and that rubbed off on all of us, but it really rubbed off on me. And so it was an experience. And when I left the Senate, a number of people, when you leave the Senate, because you have these, you have certain privileges, right? You don't have to park a certain way. You can park anywhere you want. You sit in the front, you're recognized, and you can get used to that. However, a dear friend of mine gave me some hell of advice, and I am so glad that I had the sense to listen. And she says, you know what, Laverne, you on this awesome ride, right? And it was a ride, all right? I mean, it was a ride. She said, but when you get off that ride, just know that ride's going to come to an end. And when it comes to an end, you get off and you look for the next ride. And don't be sad. You got to celebrate that ride, because it was an awesome ride. And when that ride came to an end, and where everybody else was depressed and worried about why I can't, get access to this ticket and access to that and that, I didn't care. I was like, man, this was an awesome ride. But the interesting thing that came out of that is favor. people that I had interacted with and had become friends, and I was very involved in the community and engaged and still helping people and served on boards and committees and raised money for worthy organizations. I took advantage of my role in the United States Senate. Okay, you work for a United States Senator, you look for ways that you can benefit, but it also benefit others. So it's a win-win for everybody. When I left the Senate, I still had all those relationships intact. You know, people were looking for work for me. And when Natalie Rowbottom, who was the first African-American parish president, first African-American female parish president in the entire state of Louisiana, called me, which is parish is right up the street, 20-something miles from here, and say, hey, would you like to come work for me? Now, I knew her, right? I knew of her. I had visited her when I was in the Senate, but I never thought in a million days this woman would pick up the phone and say, hey, would you like to come work for me? And the thing of it is that she had been observing me all that time that I had worked in the United States Senate. And she was like, you know, I want somebody like her to come and work for me, because one of the attributes that she was so impressed with is my loyalty. I was loyal to the senator. I mean, when I said I was loyal, I wasn't one that talked about it behind her back, because I would be one saying, y'all not gonna ever hear nothing Laverne didn't say nothing. You know what I mean? Never, ever. As people go back, what Laverne said, Laverne didn't say shit. Okay. I never, ever, ever said anything bad. And the interesting thing of it is I never called her by her first name.
Respect.
To this day.
It's absolute respect.
I always called her senator. And to this day, she always said, Laverne, you can call me Mary now. And it's really hard. Even though she's no longer United States
you
Senator,
made the association. It's hard to break the association.
Right. And so, you know, other people would be all common, no, senator. And so, Travis, I know I probably went 1,000 miles farther than what you expected. But I, you know, when I think about my experience, it was a miracle for me. It really was. And I am so thankful and grateful. And, you know, people look at me and think that I should act a certain way because I worked for a United States Senator, you know, have that privileged type of behavior. No, my behavior is thankful and grateful behavior.
Your behavior suits you because you're being authentic to yourself.
Absolutely. And I don't have to, you know, I am who I am. I remember telling somebody they kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I told them, I said, I'm Laverne Toombs. I don't have to, I am who I am. I don't have to go out here and do anything. I have a brand, and that's my brand. And I'm gonna protect my brand. So I'm Laverne Toombs. I don't have to do nothing else but just be me. That's it.
Isn't that refreshing? It
is refreshing.
Yeah. That's one of like the main reasons that people end up on the show is I can always tell if someone's ready to be a guest on the show or not. Because they'll tell me like, I want in. And if they're not ready, they'll say, well, what is a Titan? That's not up for me to decide. That's for you to decide. What are the qualities of you that make you a Titan? And when I look back on some of the stuff you shared with us, things like privilege, title, and gratitude, it's hard sometimes getting off that ride when you had all those perks. I retired last year as a naval officer, and you know, the rank that I had is no longer there. No one, you know, calls me LT anymore. Like, hey, LT, what's going on? Like that's a respect and an endearment term for a lieutenant. And you call him LT, right? Like, LT, what's going on? Like, that's fantastic. I also miss walking out to my airplane and throwing my bag and putting my feet up and not having to wait for nobody. I go to the airport now. I'm like, man, why do I gotta do all this? Why do you care what's in my bag? I get it. For the public safety, I fully get it. But I'm like, you know what? It was pretty nice just rolling out to the airplane, throwing my stuff on, having a seat wherever, and get ready to go, right? Working with the crew, working with the team. But I love that you always referred to her as senator. I know you see shows like The West Wing where they, you know, Mr. President, Mrs. President, like the professional, the respect title and the title of the office, and you're never doing that. I've got a master chief that I used to work with. He retired from the Navy, and he became a state senator. And I'm like, what the hell do I call you? I call you senator? Do I call you Paul? Do I call you master chief? He's like, I was like, that's, that's what, my professional stuff is. He's like, you can call me fucker. I was like, all right.
That's fantastic.
Hey, fucker, you want to get some barbecue? He's like, hell yeah, I do. Like,
oh, that's funny.
Oh my God.
That's one of my things. If you're listening to this and you really don't know me as a person, and you want to get to know me, send me a selfie of you flipping me off. That'll just make my day. That lets me know that you get it. And I know not everyone's that way, right? I know that bothers a lot of people, but for me, I'm like, all right, they're in. They get it. They know that we can actually be together in a meeting, together in communication, together in brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever, as we get each other. That's what that means to me. And I just love how that works. I wanted to ask you, Laverne, is there any piece of legislation that you and the senator tried to get pushed through and it just didn't go, that was kind of like a business left undone when you were no longer with her?
Yeah, there were several, but one in particular that we all are familiar with, that we eventually was passed, but not under when she was there, was the Affordable Care Act.
Affordable Care Act, yeah.
So yeah, we worked tirelessly on that. And then there was a piece of legislation, I want to think it was legislation 1628, but I don't know if that's the correct number for that bill. But after Katrina, that we had 4 major public housing here. So when Katrina, people left their homes, right? They're evacuated and scattered all over the country. Unfortunately, the people who lived in those big 4, as we call them, which is public housing, was not allowed to return. So we worked tirelessly to pass a piece of legislation for those individuals to be able to return home. The most saddest thing is to leave your home and not be able to come back home because there's nothing wrong with your home, but the federal government had wanted possession of those properties. And they made this big thing about the fact that they wanted to rehabilitate or rehab in particular areas, which is not really true. Okay. And that's the other thing too, Travis, is that you find out the real, you know, the real truth when you're in this inside, right? Where the outside is assuming, or the media is blowing things bigger than what they really are, or lying. There are people who work in politics really do know the truth, right? And we will keep that to ourselves. However,
that's hard. That's a burden. Like,
it can be. And so, you know, one of the saddest things that I experienced, and I've experienced a lot of sadness in this position. People don't realize how hurtful it can be as a staffer or as a real politician. If you really care about people, it could be a very sad thing. And that was one of them. So I had the privilege to go to some of the big 4 and visit. Now, of course, you know, people live in public housing. There's stereotyping public housing. But at the end of the day, that's where those people live. It doesn't matter if they live in a shack or a tent. That's their home. The way they left it when they evacuated for Katrina is the way that it looked when I walked in there. No mold, no nothing. They could have returned home, but they weren't able to. And so what happened to those homes? Those homes were torn down and rebuilt and densified, other words, less density. So if you had 800 units, now you only have 300, half of the units. So what happens to those families? And in the city of New Orleans, which is interesting, culture is that families live all in the same proximity. So mama might live on the corner, brother might live a block down, they all live. And so all that entire family had to pick up and move somewhere and not being able to come back home.
So they were displaced then,
Yeah, they
Laverne,
were
and
displaced
they were no longer, and they weren't even allowed to return to collect their
to get their
belongings.
things. They couldn't even go back and get their things.
So
okay?
how did the federal government then reimburse them for all the stuff that was in? They didn't.
What?
Okay.
That's a joke. No, ma'am.
So
The
this is,
federal
I
government
find that
didn't-
extremely interesting that they wouldn't
didn't
even
give them-
allow them to
They
move
didn't give
out.
them shit. Okay, they didn't give
Yeah.
them nothing. Okay,
Yeah.
that little FEMA check and whatever. So
Wow.
and
Okay.
the sad part about it, it was Black and brown people that was impacted by it. At one point, they were thinking about just turning certain areas like the lower Ninth Ward just into green space. And you had
just bulldozing it and planting grass.
Yeah, just like so. Then Brad Pitt, fortunate and unfortunate, and I explain what the unfortunate is. The fortunate is that he did build some homes in the lower Ninth Ward. The unfortunate part about it is those homes years later start falling apart. So he had to be sued, and he just now settled that suit. But again, at least somebody was trying to help people. But if you go to a lower Ninth Ward right now, Katrina happened in 2005. We're talking about almost 16 years. It looks like a war zone. They have no grocery store, so it's a complete food desert. Okay, have no pharmacy. Okay, so it's a drug desert as well. People don't have the proper transportation to those that live there to go downtown to the nearest grocery store. And tell you this, New Orleans East, and New Orleans is no different than any other city across the country. However, the thing that just blows my mind. I lived in Broadmoor, it's uptown New Orleans. Go to a particular grocery store in a particular area. And it was just a grocery store. When I sold my properties, I moved to the white side of New Orleans. And they have everything. It's the same grocery store. Has a coffee shop, has everything. And I'm like, this is interesting. Now understand this. Not that I hadn't experienced this, but I'm saying to myself, the same grocery store in one community has the bare minimum, but I go to another side of town and it has everything. And I'm saying to myself, is anybody else paying attention to this? Because this is interesting, just the grocery store alone. So when we look at the people that was in the Big Four and they lived in public housing, those people were penalized because they lived in public housing. But let me tell you something. People that live in public housing, 85 to 95% of those people have jobs. They have stereotyped them to make them think they're lazy. They live on food stamps and welfare. That's far from the truth. The food stamps that they get is not even enough to feed one person, let alone two or more. And the welfare check that they get is not anything. So they have to go and get a job. And so we have allowed a society, goes back to what you were saying, Carol, about the negativity, is that is not true. I've talked to these people. I have gone into the projects. I have a lady that bakes the best cakes in the projects and moved out of the projects because of the fact that she started her own little business. And because she took advantage of the federal government or what they had to offer, she took advantage of it, moved out, bought her own house, and started her own business. But everybody that live in subsidized housing is not lazy and not living off of subsidies. That is far, far from the truth.
It's just a stereotype, isn't it? And
absolutely.
Whether you choose,
and we have bought into it.
Some people have.
Well,
Other
not
people
everybody.
better.
No, I'm not. No, I would not dare say that everybody has. But I will say that when it comes down to some of our elected officials, and one in particular here in our state, that's all he talks about. I mean, he doesn't talk about anything else than about
Lord,
food stamps and subsidies. And I'm like,
how
you know what?
about
Just make me
how
sick.
about we consider this? If the shoe is on the other foot, right? And you were living in that environment, how about looking at it from a different perspective instead of talking about it as if you understand it?
Well, we actually, that's a good point, Carol. And let me tell you what we tried to do once with our elected officials when I was in the Senate. There's an organization called Second Harvest. And one of the fundraisers that we wanted to do, because a lot of our children, and obviously it didn't become a reality until COVID, when they realized that children's only meals that they receive is in school.
Oh,
It's lunch
God,
and
that's
snack.
heartbreaking.
And they go home and they're hungry.
Yep.
So you can't learn if you're hungry, right?
Yep.
So at the end of the day, what the director and I was thinking about doing is packing enough food for the weekend. And they couldn't eat anything else but the food that was packed in the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all the food that they had. We wanted them to experience what children experience on a weekend when they don't hardly have any food to eat. Now,
Right.
Covenant
We have
House
an
is
abundance. We can do
right,
whatever we
and we
want,
throw
right?
stuff away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so I'm always like wanting to have that experience, right? So Covenant House has a fundraiser where you raise money to sleep on the street for a night to know what it's like for teenagers to sleep on the street. So I did it because I wanted to know, okay? And
You
it was
can't
an experience,
experience it. Yeah.
but it
Until
was
you
just,
actually do it.
right. And so I did it. I slept on that cold concrete. And it had just so happened it rained that night. So I had to find a
Ugh.
cardboard box to cover me from the rain. But it was such an experience. And that was just for one night. Just think about this is common. This is every
Yeah.
night, listening to the street cars traveling and strangers passing by. And it was interesting.
Awful.
It was interesting.
That's
So
awful.
again, go back to your point, Carol, is that, it's easy for us to stereotype or label a certain group of people, and then people buy into that and drink of that Kool-Aid and like that Kool-Aid. And but it's far from the truth. And
Yeah.
so
All
those are
I can say is
such,
we got to tell them, go out and experience it, then come back and report to us whether you truly believe in that stereotype now. Come on. And do you really believe that everything's going to be okay? No. So let's make some changes so that
yeah,
we
well,
can.
that's easy. I mean, that's for us on the outside. Them, on the other hand, they're not
True.
interested. I mean, this politics that we're dealing with right now is not the politics that I was a part of when I was in the Senate. At least both sides of the aisle were willing to work together. Now
They're against
it's
each
out of
other.
control. I mean,
They're pitted, like
you got
fighting against each other.
what's her
And that's
name,
not how we.
Marjorie Greene with her
Yeah.
crazy self.
Yeah.
There's only
It's
one
just crazy.
issue where they're
All of
even
it's crazy.
working together, right? Isn't that veteran issues?
Excuse me.
Veteran
Oh
issues, I
yeah,
think, is
I mean, when
the
we
only
talk
one.
about veterans,
So I gotta speak on all of this stuff. I'm sitting over here waiting politely for y'all to finish. I'm a guy that's moved 50 times, 36 before I graduated high school. Our multiple streams of income were child support, welfare, food stamps, WICs, alimony, Social Security, SSI. I grew up in trailer parks and foster homes. I get it. I know that I am the rarity. I know that my experience and where I am today is so rare that most people wouldn't even consider it unless they are told directly by me what happened. I remember being homeless. I remember hiding out with my mom and sister at a battered woman shelter. I know what that stuff. I know what it's like to go to the food pantry and get garbage to go home and eat. I understand it. I know people wouldn't believe it by looking at me, because I got a smile on my face and am where I am. It wasn't easy. I know how awful that stuff is. I know that there's people there working their tails off. For our situation, my mom had probably 4 grand worth of medicine every month that she needed back in the 80s and 90s for bipolar disorder. And there was no way that she could work her way out of that situation. I know a lot of situations you can. You really can. A little bit of guidance, direction, a little bit of encouragement, you can work your way out of it. Some people just can't. They can't stay mentally well enough days in a row to be able to create the stability they need in their life to do anything. And she's also in northern Minnesota. The hell is she going to do for a job that covers just the medication alone each month? 4 grand a month. From where she's at, to no degree, no services, no connections, no, like, it's nearly impossible. She's in her 60s now, working her way off of support. She's taking care of herself, being mentally well most days, creating a speaking business around all the stuff that she's endured in her life. But it's taken 60 years to get there. People that are listening to this that don't understand, talk to people in your community. Talk to the people that don't look like you. Talk to the people that are serving you. Talk to the people that are out and about that maybe don't smell so good. Understand at least a bare minimum of human compassion for what they're dealing with, what I've dealt with, what I've known we've all seen and heard, and different levels of understanding in our head and in our hearts. They're different. Understanding what it really takes to do some of this stuff. I've been praised as a chain breaker for a long time. And I didn't really understand it until right after I left Houston talking to Laverne, because I brought my daughter with me. And there was something that she said that was so profound that hurt me and helped me so much. There was something that she said, that it's not your fault that no one taught you how to love. And I might have broken the chains financially. I might have gotten out of the trailer park, but there was still a lot of me that was caged in as a person because I didn't understand emotions. When you read in the Bible of what love is and what people talk about, that had no meaning to me up until that point. And we're recording this in the middle of April, so that was about 6 weeks ago. I'm 41 years old. 6 weeks ago did I learn what love is. So yeah, it may be whatever situation those people are dealing with, but to get out of that thing, it takes more than just a hand up. It takes a lot more than just some therapy. It takes a lot more than any one of us are able to do in our lifetimes. It takes real people that serve, like Laverne and Carol, real people that care about each other, that want to invest in the people around them. I got asked earlier today when I was a guest on another show why I supported nonprofits so heavily. Because all of those groups, all those people that dedicate their life to service, that's who keep me sheltered, clothed, and fed. Without them, there's not a chance I would be here. Not a chance.
And wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. Carol, my life is somewhat similar to Travis, believe it or not. I was adopted. I learned that I was adopted when I was 14, raised by an older woman, got married when I was very young at 18, went through domestic violence for a number of years. I was raped when I was 19. And so I grew up largely by the time I was 36 years old. I didn't really think that I had anything to contribute to life because all I ever knew was abuse, physical and verbal abuse. I didn't know how to love either because I never saw it, never really experienced it. The person who I thought loved me may have, but didn't know how. And actually, in my book, I actually said that that person just didn't know how because they never was taught that, never saw it. And so it was 4 women who don't look like me. 4 wonderful white women saw something in me. And all of these women are women of influence. and they weren't all, they were influenced then, but they became big time years later. One became a parish president, another one became an owner of a construction company, one was a renowned speaker, and another one owned a major company called Red Runner, which is red beans and rice, red beans. Those women took me under their wing and introduced me to a world that I didn't even know it exists. I was primarily only Black person, surrounded by women with wealth, individuals with wealth. But I started from the bottom and worked my way up. And because I listened and I observed and I asked questions, and then when I was able to just barely, stand on my own 2 feet, I made a vow to myself. I made a vow to myself that I will not see people hurt or suffer. And so when I went to work for the senator, I made a vow because I know what it's like to call somebody and they don't answer. So when I went to work for the senator, I didn't care what it took. I made sure I returned those people's phone calls. When I would see a homeless person on the street, tell you this quick story. I was in my fancy designer suit and my fancy designer shoes, looking cute, passed by this man and said, "Hey, baby, how you doing?" I stopped because I was like, "Oh, hey." I didn't think of the fact that he was flirting, which he was, but, I was like, I entertained him. I said, "Hey, how you doing?" And he was like, "What's your fine self going?" I told him, I said, "I'm going to a meeting." I said, "Why are you out here?" Because I was always curious. So, "Why are you out here?" He said, "Well, I need $5 to go in so I can take me a shower." He was a veteran, Travis. I gave him my card because he was trying to get his benefits and nobody would help him. I said, "You see that building right there, that big building right there? I'm on the 10th floor. I want you to come see me." I said, "I'm going to help you." He said, "Are you really going to help me?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you get your benefits because that's what we do. That's what we do. We work with veterans and help them get their benefits." And he took me up on the offer. That man is no longer on the street. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about that God blessed me to be in that position, is because I believe that God knew that I was going to do the right thing. And when I think about all the people that I have helped, because I wanted to, not because I was in that position, because I wanted to, because I know what it's like to hurt. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like not having a shelf roof over your head and not know if you're going to have a roof over your head, if you're going to have food to eat, if you're going to have money to pay your utilities and your bills. I've been there and done that. So when people see me now with my Hermes bag, drive my Mercedes, they have no idea the life before that. And I tell people all the time, I don't make no excuses for the handbag that I carry and the car that I drive. You know why? Because I've worked hard for that. But
100%. Laverne.
At the end of the day, I want to make sure I give. When it says about a cheerful giver, I give. I do. I give. I feel like I give all my money away because I am like Travis. I work with nonprofits that are doing a great work to give people hope and opportunity. So that's what my life is about. My life will always be about that. And I know with the type of heart that I have, that God would always bless me because he knows that my heart is in the right place. And it will always be in the right place when it comes to people. So you all, with that being said, I have about 10 more minutes because I have another meeting I need to go to. But this has been great therapy for me. Y'all about to make me cry.
Well, as we're getting to wrap it up, I got a couple questions for you. I wanted to try something out today, and I delayed this question until the end, where I asked the guest, "What is it about you? What makes you a Titan?"
Say that. What makes me?
Yeah, what are the qualities of you that make you a Titan? You've alluded to them all episode long.
Yeah, what makes me is my life struggles of lessons that I've learned from those life struggles, from my mistakes, or things that I've done to self-inflict, and even those that have been inflicted upon me. In my TED Talk, Carol, I don't know if you remember, my speech was the F-bomb. I talked about forgiveness and how I had to learn how to forgive someone who was very near and dear to me, who just celebrated the 16th year of her death, which was my adopted mother. And so every single day, I hope that I die daily from things that are contrary. I hope that I can be a better person. I want to be a good person. I really do. I want to be the best person I can be. I want to be sweet, kind, gentle, feminine, graceful, beautiful inside more than outside. Be the best mother, grandmother, friend, colleague, employee. I just want to be a good person with a good heart, and that my motives and everything that I do is right. And it has to be a win-win situation. It can't be just about me, because it's not about me. It really is about a win-win here.
Well, let's be
And so-
honest, Laverne. The win-win is if you do it for yourself, you're doing it for others too. What people don't understand is we're so incredibly intertwined, and we forget that we affect each other. So if we treat ourselves a certain way, we are really treating others, just like we said in the beginning, right, Travis?
That's right.
So, you had another question, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Another question. I got two more.
One more.
The question that I have that we try to wrap up every show with is, what would you tell someone right now that's in the struggle, right? They're struggling, they're trying to make their way, and they can't figure it out. What would you tell those people?
Well, I think it goes back to something that you said earlier, Travis, regarding faith. And it's really hard, when people are struggling to grab hold to faith, right? But one of the scriptures that I constantly remind myself of is that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. And I believe in the power of prayer. I really do. And I would hope that whomever that person is that they was not, and understand this, I'm not one that go to church every time the doors open, and I'm not a Bible carrying person, but I have faith, right? And I just believe in it wholeheartedly. And other thing that I would advise individuals to do, depending upon their situation, is to talk about it, find someone that they trust to talk. What happens a lot of times when people are struggling, they keep it to themselves and they have no conversation. So when you don't talk about it, you can't really get the help that you need. And it may not be the person that you're talking to can help you, but they may know someone that can. And that has happened for me. I've been there. So I know what it's like to be in a situation and not know what to do. But I found enough courage to talk to somebody, and they were able to help me through it. So prayer, faith, and trust in someone to talk it through. And then when someone give you advice or give whomever advice, take it and try it and see if it will work. And 9 times out of 10, it will, and we'll see change. And that, but that would be the advice that I would give. And that's the advice that I've given individuals as well. So, yeah.
And then the final question is really a layup. This is easy. Where can people get a hold of you, Laverne?
Well, believe it or not, Aura is working on my website right now. So I'm going to have a fancy website thanks to Aura. But they can friend me on Facebook, which is Laverne Saulny. Type in Laverne Saulny, and there I am. and Instagram, Laverne Toombs. Type that in, and there I am. And then Instagram, Laverne Toombs. Type that in, and there I am. So, or just type in Laverne Toombs, and Lord have mercy, you all see all kinds of stuff. I do it quite often to see what people got up on there, or Laverne Saulny. I just did it the other week, actually, and I was kind of surprised of what I saw. So yeah, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and my website would be, I think is LT Right For You is my website, LTRightForYou.com.
Thank
They
you
can
so much,
email
Laverne.
Right on.
Appreciate you being our guest today.
Thank you.
That's all for this episode of Titan Evolution Podcast. We hope this no-holds-barred conversation opened your eyes on what it takes to live a genuinely happy life according to your own terms. Now that you've treated yourself to such a refreshing discussion, you cannot listen to nonsense content anymore. Be sure not to miss an episode by subscribing to the show at TitanEvolutionPodcast.com. Don't forget to share the word so more people can be enlightened, informed, and entertained. Thank you for listening.